Coming up, we're going to be ranking our favorite Universal Orlando roller coasters on this episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. I'm your host, Craig Williams. I'm joined alongside by my co-host, Rhino.
Hello.
And yes, we are back in the studio now for right now, and then we'll see where we are next week. I want it to be where in the world are Craig and Rhino, like Carmen Sandiego style.
We need theme song music, too, for that.
Yes.
Where on earth is... That was my favorite version of the theme song.
Yeah, I did like that one. I'm sure someone will end up making us a theme for it. And if you want to make us a theme for this show, for our Carmen Sandiego antics, then you can always, of course, send it to Craig at DisneyInfo.com, and I'll take a listen to it, and maybe we'll play it. I actually, during the past couple weeks, I dug into our old themes that people submitted to us way back when, and started dropping them randomly in bits and pieces into the audio-only episodes that we've had going out. So I'm always happy to put in a theme, but welcome to this week's show. Before we get started, I need to remind you that this is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel. If you like our content, you want to support us, please consider booking your next vacation through Dreams Unlimited Travel. Costs you no extra money, and you get that world-class Dreams Unlimited Travel agent support. So book your next vacation today at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. And then also, please take a second to hit the thumbs up on this video, subscribe to UO Fan, and make sure you're leaving comments, questions, and video suggestions in the comment section. Then if you're listening to this, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, please leave us 5-star ratings and reviews. That would mean the world to me. But what are we talking about this week on the show? Well, Jurassic World Velocicoaster is officially open. It's up and running now. So what better time than right now to rank all of the Universal Orlando roller coasters? We have, by our count, there's 9, and I'm going to be extremely embarrassed if we completely forgot about one, but I've looked at this list like 6 times, and I think that we have them all perfectly.
Oh my God, we don't have Fast and the Furious Supercharged.
Oh, I mean, that's a whole different type of roller coaster. That's an emotional roller coaster.
Emotional one, yeah.
I don't know if it's a roller coaster. Of course, we're talking about rails. As in a roller coaster.
Okay. I was trying to think of a joke, but it couldn't come to me fast enough.
It got nothing. Our roller coasters need to have rails. They need to have some sort of ride vehicle, and that's what we're going with. But you know what? We'll never release this if we ended up forgetting about something, and that's how I'm going to leave it. We're not including the water roller coaster over at Volcano Bay. We have to draw the line somewhere.
Or Dudley Do-Right. That's a flume ride. That's not a coaster.
Yeah, that is a flume. So what are our contenders? Well, over at Islands of Adventure, we have the Incredible Hulk Coaster. We have the Jurassic World Velocicoaster. Also in the Jurassic Park area, even though we're not going to technically include it in this list, but we kind of are, we have Pteranodon Flyers inside Camp Jurassic. Then we also, of course, have Flight of the Hippogriff in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, as well as Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. That is also in there. And that's it for, technically, Islands of Adventure. I know High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train Ride is like...
It's got rails in the vehicle.
It does. It slightly borders on it, but I'm not including it because there is elevation gain, I feel like there's more elevation gain at like the little roller coasters they built at fairs and farm shows and traveling carnivals that... If for some reason your parents were okay with you riding them as a kid, and now you look at it saying like, I know it only goes 6 feet off the ground, but this does not seem safe at all one bit. But that's Islands of Adventure. over in Universal Studios Florida, we have Revenge of the Mummy. We have Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts. We have the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, and we have Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse Coaster. And no, we're not including the Simpsons ride, even though there is a portion where you feel like you're on a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if we're really getting into it, I think E.T. is more of a dark ride, but technically there's a ride vehicle being suspended from a rail, but it also is controlled. It's not, gravity isn't doing all the work. I think that's what's unique about all of these, and roller coasters in general as a rule, is that gravity does play a part in it. And
stresses me out.
Yeah, it does stress you out. And those are the contenders for this. And I'm still mentally coping with the idea of what is a roller coaster. And while I do that, we're going to start off by saying the honorable mention of sorts in the ranks. We're going to say Pteranodon Flyers. And of course, there's a lot of people out there who have never had the chance to experience it, and that's because Pteranodon Flyers during normal park operation does require you to actually ride with little kids.
Child.
Yeah. Just because of the unique style of the roller coaster. It's a single rail roller coaster, and you're sitting on these basically just flat seats and flying over Camp Jurassic as gravity takes you further and further back down to the station. It's not a completely unique system. I mean, they have them at other parks around the world, but in terms of Universal, it is unique. It is the only one of it at Universal, and it does have that one specific part of it, though, that is that you need to ride with a child in order to go on. And I believe that's just like one part of it, though. It's also if you do, for some reason, have any special parties at Islands of Adventure, if you're attending one that includes Jurassic Park, if it's, a special annual pass holder thing after hours, I believe on those occasions they will let adults ride by themselves. But during normal park operations, you have to have a kid, and obviously not all of us have kids. And so for that reason, some of us have not ridden it. And in this situation, I'm talking about Rhino. He has never ridden it.
I have not. I wish I had known this about a party, because I had gone to a party last week, and I would have ridden it. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have only ridden it, I think 3 times, twice on 2 different occasions. The last time, it was with Nancy Johnson kids. Nancy Johnson kids? I don't know.
Nancy Johnson kids.
It was Nancy Johnson's kids that I was able to ride it with. The views are obviously spectacular. It moves fast enough that there's like this light little thrill to it, but it doesn't move so fast that you like can't actually take in what you're seeing around. It feels slightly dangerous, but at the same time, it doesn't. And it's a really fun little coaster. And I absolutely recommend it if you ever have a chance to experience it. I would absolutely say go for it. Even if you're kind of on the fence about it, think like, oh, this might not be for me. I don't want to do it, but I would still say just go for it. But we're going to get into our actual list now. So we're going to just be counting down from 8 to 1. And I'm going to have Rhino kick it off with his number 8.
Number 8, I have Rip Ride Rocket. Really? I've never done it. I don't plan on ever doing it, so it's just not for me. Nothing about it really makes me want to do it. I'm not a big heights person. I am afraid of the 90-degree incline going up, and I'm convinced it goes upside down, even though I'm told it does not. And so I don't think there will ever be a day where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Today's the day. I'm going on it. It's too much of just a bar in the middle of the planet.
It's a tough one. I will say it's the fear that always runs through my head with Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket truly just comes down to the initial going straight uphill, because I've never been evacuated from a roller coaster. I have evacuated roller coasters, but I've never been evacuated from one of them. Actually, that's a lie. I did get evacuated off of Gringotts on the media preview party for it, and that was a hoot, but that was still on a flat level. That wasn't like it was straight up in the air. And I know that when roller coasters are designed to, when they're designed to, just to function, when it comes, they always build it in knowing that evacuations could happen. I still look at it though, and I'm like, I don't understand. If I'm facing straight up, how am I supposed to safely get out of there?
How do you get out of the seat?
And I know that it's safely done, and it has been safely done before. They've had lots of different experiences with it, from all the way at the tip top of the Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. I know when it was really, really in its early days, I believe it had problems valleying, and that's when it goes down a hill but can't get back up. And technically, eventually, it just keeps moving back and forth until it just stops right at a low valley. And
that sounds like a nightmare too.
Yeah, and so during some of these points, that's where it would be in a red zone, and that's when the fire department gets called in because they have to help too. And it's terrifying, and I'm sorry if I just terrified you away from Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, but after that initial hill and the idea of I could get stuck at any point in time, after that, the rest of the ride is actually a lot of fun. It terrifies me, but in the best ways possible.
The hardest part on a coaster for me is the click, 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 is the climb. Is so like Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom, that's the hard part for that. And but a lot of these newer type of coasters that have built in the last few years are like a launch coaster that don't require that climb. Like Hagrid's or Velocicoaster, they just go. There's no click, 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 where you're just I regret every decision I've ever made in my entire life that brought me to this moment. They don't give you time to think about it. Yeah. They just shoot you out.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do that, or then there's also the hyper coasters that you'll find at other parks around that, for once you start getting over the 200-foot mark, it's still it's a chain lift of sorts. It's not the same style of lift, but it will send you up a lot faster. And I like those ones because it's Cedar Point at Millennium Force going 300 feet up. They're not launching you 300 feet up a chain lift, but it's a more rapid system to get you up the actual lift hill, because just think about how nerve-wracking it would be to go 300 feet just slowly creeping up. It would be terrifying, because I'm in the same boat. I don't like chain lifts. That's the only part of roller coasters that truly freak me out. And after that, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But I get your fear. I get your fear with it. It's not all the way at the bottom on my list, though. My bottom of the list is Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse coaster that you can find in Kid Zone. And to me, it's, I know it's a nice family coaster starting off. It's perfect for kids. It's a first coaster, and it's no thrills. It's very comparable to Flight of the Hippogriff over at Islands of Adventure. It's like Goofy's Barnstormer over at Walt Disney World. But I think the reason why I would put it lower down and not put Flight of the Hippogriff in the same vein is, at least with Flight of the Hippogriff, you have some height because you're sitting up on the hill and looking down over. Nuthouse coaster is just a small coaster tucked back in the section of a park, or a section of that part of the park that is just completely irrelevant in every way, shape, and form. And yeah, I know. Didn't they make a Woody Woodpecker movie in the past couple of years?
Yeah.
Or are they going to?
No. I think it came out. It was just out of nowhere. I don't know who made it, what company made it. Was it Universal? I don't know. But there was one that was just came and went. But I don't even think it was theatrically released. I think it was just
Netflix,
a VOD.
Maybe? I don't know.
Look this up.
You look that up. I'm just going to say it's completely irrelevant to me, and it's fun. There's noises. Woody Woodpecker is definitely a hoot and a holler, but that coaster is at the bottom of my list for sure.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. It's listed as 2017 on IMDb, but then the YouTube trailer says 2018. The live action Woody Woodpecker movie. But It says release November 22nd, 2019, even though in parentheses it has 2017 with its title. So it seems like it might have been a movie that faced some challenges along the way.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit. Rhino, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is, so I did mine kind of in order of what you could probably get me on again or not. And the Incredible Hulk coaster is number 7 because I would rather never do it again.
Yeah.
I've done it the one time. Again, it's a coaster that I think is just too intense for my nausea and like my body and whatever. And like, I know that stuff's only going to get worse as I get older, but I've done it once. I'm happy that I did the one time to experience it because I do think the queue is cool. I think the launch point is awesome, but then it's just absolutely like terrifying for me the rest of the way, and not like fun terrifying. So I don't know. I'm not saying I don't think I would never do it again, but it would probably be one of those where I'm moving and I don't know that when I'm ever going to come back here, maybe I'd have to do it as like a goodbye to say like, oh, look, I did it. Like Rip Ride Rocket. No way. I don't care if I ever do it. Like with the Incredible Hulk, sometimes I'm curious about being like, I want to go back inside and see the launch point again.
Yeah, and the launch is a ton of fun. And the entire first section, you launch out at 40 plus miles an hour and you just immediately go into the roll and down and you're like looping right away. And that part I'm always fine with. It's once you finally loop back around closer to like where the load station is and you start getting into more of the tight twists and turns, that's when my head really starts bobbling
my head
around.
Rattles. That's the thing. That's the problem.
And it's perfect if you're in the front row, but obviously, front rows that takes extra time to load. Not everyone can sit in the front row because it is like all the roller coasters at Universal. The seats are very open and acceptable, but there are some people who will need to sit in the seats that have a little extra room, and so for some people the front row is not the option, and all you're left is with the shaking and rattling and rolling. But I love when they changed it up however many years ago that was, and the Patrick Stump music that accompanies you on it. It's a solid roller coaster. It's not that low for me, but obviously yeah, you said it perfectly. It's what would get you to go back on again.
Right. It just, I don't like how my body feels when I'm done. So the excitement doesn't outweigh the pain that I'm in later, because it makes me feel like my body was put into a blender, and I don't particularly enjoy that feeling. But some people they love that test of endurance.
Yeah. And at my number 7, I had Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. Again, as I basically said, I love the rest of the ride. It's just that lift, and it's enough. It's enough to get me to not want to do it. I'm terrified of heights. I'm fine. I'm fine as long as everything is working fine with heights. It's just the idea that something will go wrong. And I know that's the whole point of roller coasters, is that you're overcoming that fear. You're getting that rush of adrenaline, excitement. You know what? This isn't a therapy session. This is a fun podcast talking about roller coasters. So I will deal with that trauma that I have in my life for another day. But what's your number 6?
Well, I have Woody Woodpecker at number 6, because it's like on the ones where I'm like, yeah, I can do that again easy. But the theming for me bumps it down to 6, because it's just a very basic coaster, like you said. It reminds me of the roadside attraction.
Yeah,
roller coasters, like just flat on the ground, simple, nothing, no bells and whistles.
Exactly. I mean, a little bells and whistles, but not enough.
Literal bells and whistles.
Yeah, exactly. And for my number 6, I have probably my first controversial pick of all of this, and I'm putting Harry Potter in the Escape from Gringotts all the way down on the list. And again, this is me ranking roller coasters, and I know the first thing should be is, how in the world can you place that before lower on the list than Flight of the Hippogriff?
Yeah.
And I think I already sold a little bit of why I put Flight of the Hippogriff higher, but really with Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, the fact is it's kind of a hybrid roller coaster more than anything. Yes, it is a roller coaster, but the fact that you're sitting on these cars that also are moving motion simulators as well, it's kind of a blend of the two. And while the the first scene that you go into where your car just starts to lift up from the back and you're facing down and you have that release, while that is an amazing moment in that attraction and great, after that,
you start too high. It's a literal high of the ride. And then it's kind of, I don't mean to be downhill, but it literally is downhill, but like,
yeah. Then after that, you have a lot of flat show scenes that you're being sent through, but you have to stop because you need to be able to see everything. And then you have right at the very end, you have a launch up that kind of twists you around. But it's the actual roller coaster portions of it are just so short that as a roller coaster, I would never say to go out of the way. If we were talking about it just in thrill rides as a general, it would be a lot higher up in thrill rides. It's one of my favorite in Universal Studios Florida, but as a roller coaster, no, it's not, doesn't match.
I think classifying it as a roller coaster actually gets a lot of people who probably don't do the attraction because of that, where I'm like, I don't think you should think about it as a roller coaster. And even then, the part you're talking about where the car goes up and it holds you there for a minute, it's really not, it's the anticipation of the drop that gets you, where it's really not, it's like a swoop. It's not even really, because I just did it too last week again, and I was like, I love the story, and I like, obviously I'm a fan of Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling, problematic now, but that doesn't mean we can't celebrate something, but it's like, I don't know. It's a good storytelling attraction in terms of like it being telling a story from the beginning to the end. And I like that experience of it, but you're 100% right about the thrills of it. It's if you're going for the thrill, I think it is a little bit of a letdown.
I would absolutely say that perfectly. But Rhino, what is your number 5?
It's Flight of the Hippogriff, actually. So solely because, again, like you said, like I like the view, the hill you get on it a little bit, because it's one of those where you're like, I'm actually not that high up, but it's the perspective of where it is, and like it gives you this kind of like, whoa, like where am I? Like, and I don't know, I like it as like for kids or just single rider if you can get in there by yourself. It's not really too adult sized people. There's a squish, but I think it's like a fun, just quick roller coaster. That again, it's the theming of it, where it's like going through like the pumpkin patch, like outside of Hagrid's hut. Like I enjoy that.
Flight of the Hippogriff, yeah, it's got a lot. It's got the view. It's got Buckbeak. It has Hagrid's hut. It has a lot, and it's not the greatest view necessarily. It's there's Jurassic World Velocicoaster. That's got a good view. You're moving very fast. High in the Sky Seuss Trolley train ride. Good view, but you're outside looking in. This one looks right down into Hogsmeade. Pretty unique. It's a unique view, in my take.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Yes, incredibly. And there's no problem with beads there.
Beads,
yes. Correct. My number 5 is the Incredible Hulk coaster, and you know what? It would be higher, but ultimately, it all comes back down to the fact that it comes down to the head shaking, and if I could be in row 1 every single time, and the Incredible Hulk coaster only existed as a row 1 roller coaster, it would be a little bit higher on my list probably, but. I have to leave it where it is because of the cards that I was dealt in this situation with me getting older and not being able to handle some intense roller coasters as well as I used to be able to in the past. Growing old sucks. Yeah. Don't do it. Rhino, number 4.
I have Gringotts as my number 4. It was a tough call between that and my number 3. It was very like on the line, but ultimately I think for what you said before, I think Gringotts is maybe just having done it as much as I have now, is that like it really doesn't have a ton of like thrilling parts of it, but I enjoy the coaster as a storytelling experience, like from beginning to like the queue is great. I think I think how it tells the story and how it unfolds in the attraction is awesome, and so it's like I do really enjoy it. But if we're talking in terms of like the coaster experience itself, I think it's a little bit of like it starts on that high and then it just kind of like there's nothing that equals that first moment of the coaster. later. So I feel like it's like you're starting at the most exciting part, and then it's just kind of like I don't want to be a downer, say downhill, because I still like the end too with the dragon tail and when it pulls you out and everything. Like
I feel you get pulled out and you circle around the corner and Bill Weasley's there, and after all, it's the safest place on earth, and the music wells and it's nice, and then you have to go back to your locker and go through that madness, and you're like, this is the second roller coaster I've been on now in 2 seconds. One is that, and then the next is the lockers. That was my attempt at stand-up. Did not work. I will quit that. What is
the deal with lockers?
What? Oh, the deal with universal lockers. I mean, could they be any smaller? No. Okay, fair enough. It's the only other thing I was going to say about it is I like your statement of it. It's all downhill from there, and it kind of is true. I feel like that was in the back of their mind when they made it. It's like, hey, well, from the beginning, it's all downhill from here. So why not? Why not just actually make it that way? And that was your number 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my number 4 was Flight of the Hippogriff. Again, I think we've now spoken enough on it. It's got Harry Potter all throughout it. It's got the view at the top. It's nice. And now we're going to get to where it's interesting, because now I believe that for our number 3, we probably have the same one.
I think we do.
Probably.
Revenge of the Mummy.
Okay, that is also mine, yes.
A universal classic. I went on it recently with somebody for their first time, and I've done this like a couple of times now, having to explain to somebody where I'm like, it's not the typical type of a roller coaster where you're like, oh, coaster, I'm so high in the air, I'm afraid of heights, it's scary. It's like this cool, it's the ride dynamic of how its story unfolds, but how it, like, I don't know. I just think too, it's like 20 years old at this point, right?
It was 2004, so we still have a couple more years.
Okay, so like it's 16 or 17 years old. So, but it's just one of those things where it's just like, this is still a fun experience, but it's like straddling both, like, that's the old type of Universal where it was all about movie making, so we had to really kind of shoehorn that plot into it, but then also having this like really kind of a coaster that essentially is telling a story in the beginning. It's a storytelling coaster, I would argue, the first half of it at the very least, or I think the whole thing. But yeah, I don't. It's still a fun experience that ultimately I think holds up. Like,
yeah, the story does get a little bit harder to not. I don't want to say it gets harder to follow after you finally launch up the hill and get into the major coaster portion of it. But and a lot of times I feel like the story's hard to get through in the queue overall, but yeah, most of the people going don't actually care about the story, so it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you can ignore everything that happens in the ride, and you can just sit back and laugh about Brendan Fraser and his cup of coffee, and that's good enough for you. But no, there is a solid story there, and while the ride starts off as like more of a dark ride than a roller coaster, you get a little bit more of that story in those little small pieces, and then you get flung into a roller coaster portion. And ultimately, the roller coaster portion, you take away everything about the Mummy from it. I don't find it to be next level by any means. If it just had if it was in like a different theme park and it was called like the Annihilator and no movie attached to it, it would not be a marquee experience. But the fact is, there still is some fun to it. There's still thrills. But then once you blend it in with the fact that our generation in particular has such an appreciation and love for the Mummy movies, well, the Mummy, and then I'll give Returns a shot.
I was going to say, the second one's fine.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's good. Minus the weird air balloon thing.
Yeah, I on my mind, I always think about the air balloon. Yeah. Always the air balloon. But then I'm like, but I love, and the weird rock on the scorpion. The scorpion rock.
God, just think back to that. Is definitely, we're right around 20 years with that. Think about the rock back then versus now.
Who would have known? Who would have known? That was like his first movie, I think. And it was like, who would be like, that guy's going to be the most paid actor in Hollywood at some point, and one of the best things to ever grace cinema?
Yeah, he was one of my 2 favorite wrestlers, and then when he went to start making movies, I was like, I don't think I really like him anymore as a movie star because of the Mummy and Scorpion King, and then Walking Tall. Like I wasn't huge on that, but then things just really shifted.
I wonder where the turn happened with him. I wonder what it would have to be.
I know for a lot of people it's right around Fast 5.
And Furious?
Yeah,
I was going to say that's probably it.
But either way, we're happy for him. We know he's sitting here watching this right now, and he's loving that we're paying him all of these compliments. But yeah, back to Revenge of the Mummy with it. Everything with it just works real well. And when the effects are all working in sync together and they're working perfectly, you have fire up above your head. Fog is taking off at the right spots. Not pots. I don't think they put fog in pots, but maybe one day they will. But when all the effects are working on that attraction, it's a fun roller coaster all the way around. And well deserved for its number 3 spot. I almost had it in my number 2, but then it just came down to which one, if you strip away theme, which one of these is a better roller coaster. And that leads us to our final picks, which Rhino and I know were swapped on our number 1 and 2, because if you paid attention to anything we've talked about in the past 2 months around Velocicoaster, we always then bring up Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, and we're pretty much stuck on now where my number 1 is Jurassic World Velocicoaster and number 2 is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, and Rhino's is...
Mine is number 2, Velocicoaster. Number 1, Hagrid's.
You thought about saying all of the title and then you stopped.
I can't. I 100% know I won't be able to rattle it all off, so I stopped.
I felt it in your voice. I could hear like, every little bit. It was Hagrid's. Pause.
I even had inhaled. I had the breath for it and everything.
Yeah. Oh, why for you? Why Jurassic World, especially, that just opened up. The hype is real.
Yeah. And well deserved too. Again, it's the theming that will get me to a coaster. And I think it's amazing what they've done with Velocicoaster to turn what could just be a roller coaster experience. Like what they've done with the aesthetic, with the queue, with the actual attraction, the experience that you're having on it is so, it's good. It's great. It's definitely, in terms of their thrill coasters, like coasters for you're going to be so terrified, whatever. I think it's their best one 100%. I just think to myself, which one am I physically going to be able to do on just a random day of the week at the park, and I forgot my Dramamine, which also isn't to say that Hagrid's I wouldn't necessarily need the Dramamine for, because it goes backwards for that bit of time that does actually make me feel nauseous a little bit. But I think ultimately it's just, I think I chose Hagrid's in terms of the accessibility for me as my number 1 of being able to ride it with so many, probably knowing I could get my mom on that ride and being like, okay, I bet my mom could still do it, although the backwards part might be tough for her. But Velocicoaster is definitely one of the, I felt changed after I had done that ride. And again, my body didn't feel destroyed either, which I think was a first for me for an attraction that is that extreme. That I literally was like, my head didn't hurt. My body didn't physically hurt. I mean, I was shaking with adrenaline. I couldn't lift my legs when I went to walk off the ride. But that was I think it's a must do if you're here. Yep. There's no question. It's difficult for me because it's right at that point where I'm like, I think ultimately I have to work myself into getting on the Velocicoaster, whereas for Hagrid's, I can just get on it.
It's definitely that next level of intent that could kind of keep away people who aren't necessarily the greatest thrill seekers, where Hagrid's is still very accessible for a lot more ages and a lot more thrill levels. And that would put Hagrid's, above Jurassic World Velocicoaster for a lot of people. And I love Hagrid's. I love being in the forest, and it is amazing to see just in the couple of years it's been open how it's really adapted to that landscape. The animatronics, of course, are awesome in there. It really is a story coaster. My only little complaints about it are I think honestly the best seat in that coaster is the front row, because of when you go up the spike
I think
before you go back down. Like that's the biggest thrill. Besides then when you have the drop portion. I mean,
I think the actual riding of the river, the twisting is still exciting for me. I don't know.
It's exciting, but it's not too intense and crazy. So I feel like with Hagrid's, that's one of the problems is like if you're in the back row, which a lot of people love the back row for roller coasters, Hagrid's on the back row doesn't really do anything for you except during the backwards portion, you feel like when you are all the way back into the tunnel before you drop down. Yeah, I feel like there you're in the most amount of darkness, so maybe it's not as like blatant about, oh yeah, I can see everything happening because, I'm so far back. But this is me just musing on it. I don't have any true proof with it, but I just feel like the front row is the go-to seat in Hagrid's, and it's not a great of an experience if you're in any of the other rows. And it's so much better riding on the motorbike than it is riding in the sidecar. So you can technically have a double negative on it. You can be in a sidecar and you can be towards the back, and it's not as thrilling. So just those little things hold it for me. But Jurassic World Velocicoaster, it's fast. That the launch to go up over the top hat is my current favorite portion of any roller coaster in Universal or even Walt Disney World or any of my theme parks that I typically go to right now. I love that top hat when you are just slowly going up over it and you get that little bit of airtime. It's perfect. And the Mosasaurus roll.
That twist right before you go over the top is just where you're like, it forces you to open your eyes and you're just like, oh my God. Yeah.
It's so good. And I think it's good enough reason. If you're ready to travel, get on a plane or get in your car, get a hotel around Universal Orlando and get to Jurassic World Velocicoaster. See the parks since they've been closed. Well, not since they've been closed. If you haven't been back since they reopened from their brief closure and from the pandemic, just see them in the state they're in right now. It's got a lot going for it. I think right now with Jurassic World Velocicoaster, it's a perfect time to visit Universal Orlando. And that's it for our list. So I'm going to just say, if you need help planning that trip to Universal Orlando and you want to support us a little bit as well too, remember, book your next Universal Orlando vacation through Dreams Unlimited Travel. Get a free no obligation quote today at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. But that's it for this episode. Rhino, thank you for chatting with me about it.
Mm-hmm.
This one was a little long one. We behind the scenes, we had a recording error halfway through, and because of that, we have now been talking way too long. And
I'm hungry.
I'm
hungry.
thirsty.
I'm hungry, Janelda.
And I'm thirsty. You see, you need a salty potato chip, and I need.
Why do people take other people's potato chips?
They're hungry, and I need some water pretty fierce. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much, everyone out there, for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, please hit the thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to UOFan on YouTube. Make sure you're leaving comments, questions, video suggestions in the comments section below. If you're listening to this, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. And if it's through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. And also, if you want extra DIS content beyond what we offer you on our normal channels, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter for us at patreon.com/DIS Unplugged. There's a lot of interesting things we're starting to do with Patreon now, and perfect time to dip your toes in the water and, you pay for a month at whatever level you feel comfortable with. And if you don't like the content, you only have to stick around for that 1 month and you can leave. Call us bozos on the way out. Because that's what we are.
Bozos.
Yeah. So thank you again to everyone out there. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again real soon with another episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. Take care, and remember, we still haven't changed the name.